welcome to The Entrepreneurial Musician, a coaching service, podcast, and blog preparing today's musicians for tomorrow's realities. This is TEM216, titled 3 Tips for Better Communication. Thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, if you are looking to increase your income and the impact of your music on the world and to find the people that you are truly meant to serve, then come visit tem.fm/coaching, and then we can see if TEM coaching is a good fit for you. I do a lot of one-on-one coachings. I offer masterminds. Coming very soon, as in next month, I'm offering live events, and there's going to be a lot of those. You can join the many musicians I've helped prepare for the realities of tomorrow's music business. Again, that's tem.fm/coaching to set up your free consultation. Okay. This is, what is this, episode 3 or 4 that's on video. So if you happen to be a podcast listener and you are listening to this and you are not aware yet, then we have a brand new YouTube channel, which is awesome. And only on the YouTube channel can you see my hair, which has not been cut since February. So for some people, it would be a value add to not see my hair. Others, it is a value add to see it because it looks pretty spectacular. So speaking of 2020 and not just like Corona hair, but there was a tweet from just a few hours ago, right before I sat down to record this, from Matthew Capucci, who is a meteorologist with the Washington Post. This is the most 2020 thing that I have heard yet, and we're almost 8 months in. This is a meteorologist writing this. For the first time in history, a tornado warning has been issued for a likely fire tornado. These are not fire whirls. This is a rotating smoke plume being ingested into a pyrocumulonimbus cloud that could produce a bona fide fire-induced tornado, tornadic wind speeds. So I don't know how many of you had fire tornadoes on your 2020 Armageddon bingo card, but if you did, congratulations. So that was a sign that I needed to put Twitter away and I needed to go and talk into the microphone. So anyways, moving right along, 3 tips for better communication. I saw a tweet by James Clear, who I have mentioned a number of times, and especially a lot in the last year, I'd say. His stuff is just so good. Sign up for his newsletter. It's weekly. It's incredible. His Twitter feed is a must follow. He had a tweet earlier tonight. He said, "Lesson I'm slowly learning. Waiting to reply because you don't have an answer yet, parentheses, or you don't want to share bad news, makes the situation worse. Silence frustrates and confuses people. It's better to say, hey, no update yet, still working on it. Try to over-communicate." I think that this is really, really wise. Putting off communicating with someone is actually communicating quite a bit, and it can sometimes be communicating things that actually aren't true, but all that matters is what the other person perceives, right? It can be seen as whatever the thing is not a priority to you. It can actually give someone a false sense that things are going well when they're not going well. You never want to put off sharing bad news with people. As I recently heard, when you put off making a decision, you're actually making a decision. Just the very act of putting off making a decision is making a decision. It's the exact same thing with communicating. People want to be kept in the loop. I was taught this actually during my undergrad by Rex Martin, who was my tuba professor at Northwestern University. When I started studying there, he was, I don't think, quite 35 yet, and he had already played in over 3,000 radio and TV commercials in Chicago. And so he was like the king tuba freelancer in Chicago. And he taught us that when a freelancer calls, and this now goes for email, this goes for text, this goes for anywhere that you're reachable, that you always need to get back to them immediately. And I will now get compliments all the time. If I remember, I think the last time that the Baltimore Symphony I emailed her right away, and I actually didn't have all the data, but I said I need to speak with my wife to confirm childcare, what she is teaching for the next 2 hours. I will get back to you by 4 p.m. And I got an email back saying, thank you so much for getting back to me so quickly. No problem about 4 o'clock. Thank you very much. And then she even thanked me when I got there. She thanked me again for just being so thorough with keeping people in the loop. It turns out that that's good advice, not just for contractors or for personnel managers for orchestras back when they were a thing before the world got turned upside down. That's great advice for all situations, business and personal, is keep people in the loop even when you tell them I don't have an answer yet, because even that tells a lot, right? And it can be what I told the personnel manager, I don't have an answer yet, and it's because the other person, the people, this in this case it was person who can confirm this with 100% certainty for me, is busy for the next 2 hours. It could have been by the end of the day, etc. Not only is she probably not going to go to the next person down the list, but she's also much more likely, even if I have to be a no, to say yes to me. To reach out to me again the next time. That goes for all situations. And one thing that's funny, I saw somebody joke about this on Twitter the other day. I spent too much time there, if you couldn't tell. But they said that emails in quarantine time have either been answered within a few minutes or like 3 months later, and I have been guilty of that. But it's really important to just keep people in the loop during remarkable times like now, and during normal times. It can be pretty hard to over communicate with people. That is possible. That absolutely is possible. And when you're communicating with someone when they haven't asked, and when you're not actually offering any usable or actionable or relevant information, that's of course too much. But that's not what James is talking about in this tweet. So I thought that tweet was absolutely worth sharing. The next thing is a lesson that I learned from my dear friend Pat Sheridan. And Pat told me that he had learned a while ago that in life, but he was talking about in business, that when any communication with someone feels even 1% contentious, and frequently we can have much more contentious than that, right? It could even just 1% contentious. His advice is pick up the phone and place a call and just actually speak to that person and tell them what there is. There is no tone to email. There is no tone to text messages. There is no tone to DMs or any of the above. There's no tone. And so when something is a little bit contentious, or it feels just a little bit off, is what he was really getting at, then frequently there's actually not anything off at all. And if you just pick up the phone and speak to them, in general, I don't want you to call me. I love texts. Email is probably second on that list. I mean, there's like a long list of things before I want to hear a voicemail from you, and I have been answering my phone more because we're all so free because everything got canceled. But pick up the phone. It is. I actually had a situation recently, and it was a business situation where someone had agreed to something with me, and then they had to change their minds. I wouldn't say have to. They did change their minds like a full week later, and they sent me an email in that regard, and I got a little bit irritated, although. I've got some tools in my life through that people way wiser than I have shared with me over the years, where I was able to figure out it wasn't about me. There was no part of what they did or how they did it was actually about me. So to take it personally is completely ridiculous. But it's still a situation where if it was me, I would like to think that I would have picked up the phone to deliver that message rather than sending it in an email, which I happened to get at like 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night, which wasn't really ideal timing. So anyway, so pick up the phone whenever anything is even a little bit weird, and it will almost always get less weird than it would have been if you just send it in an email. And then the last one, which I believe that I have shared on the podcast before, but this is the single best piece of advice that I have ever received from anyone about anything. That's quite a setup, I recognize, but this is it. In 45 years, this is the best advice I've ever gotten. Well, other than attending my first fish show, which my friend Russell told me I should do. Other than that, this is the best piece of advice that I have ever received. And that is that when something is even a little bit contentious, I ask myself before I open my mouth, I always try to start a sequence where I ask myself three questions. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me right this second? And I almost always get at least one no during that sequence. There are plenty of times when does this need to be said? And it's yes, actually, this needs to be said. This is not just my ego. This is not just me needing to feel superior. This is not just me whatever. There's a lot of reasons why a lot of us open our mouths, which is not actually yes, this needs to be said. Second question is, does this need to be said by me? There are plenty of times when it absolutely needs to be said by me, right? Sometimes I'm the only person who is involved or has the knowledge and can say it. Or sometimes it's just that I am the best person to deliver because of my relationship or lack thereof. I mean, there's a lot of different angles here, right? So sometimes it's a yes, this needs to be said. Yes, this needs to be said by me. I find that the third question, does this need to be said by me right this second? That one is rarely a yes if I actually have the self awareness to start this sequence, because even if I'm just being selfish, that third question, frequently, even if I'm trying to get my way, I'm going to get better results. Forget about being just a better person or thinking about the other person, which is really important. It's not very 2020 on brand, but it's very important, right? But even if I'm just being selfish, I'm only worried about this guy, then I will frequently get better results when it's not in the heat of the moment, when the other person cools off, or when I cool off, or when I get some sleep, or when I'm not hungry, or when they didn't just screw up, which, there's frequently that I need feedback when I screw something up, but right after I make the mistake is not always the best time for me to receive criticism. And that's something that I've worked on throughout my life. And I wouldn't say that I'm bad at receiving criticism right afterwards, but I will tell you that I'm better at it a couple of days later. And so does this need to be said by me right this second? If it's not pressing, if it's just like, well, I should say something so this doesn't happen again. But if that thing isn't going to happen, there's no chance of it happening for another month, then I don't need to open my mouth right that moment, right? So does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said by me right this second? And frequently putting that off. And now this is not communicating with someone, right? This is just communicating in a better way with when I can conjure up more empathy, or when they're more open to hearing it, etc. So those are my three tips for better communicating. Well, one I blatantly stole from James Clear, which it's important to steal from people. Well, all of these I stole. The pick up the phone I stole from Pat Sheridan, and I'm trying to think of the three questions. That was an old mentor who's not, I stole all three of these. I don't think I've said a single original thought in 216 episodes of TEM. I just usually know who to steal stuff from. Thank you to everyone for listening, subscribing, leaving a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get TEM, and simply for your attention. I'm always thanking you for that. It's the most valuable commodity that any of us have to give. TEM is produced by Will Houchin, who is a superstar, as a part of the Petalone Media Podcast Network. The theme music for TEM is played by Ben Barron on clarinet, Rich Kelly on trumpet, Daniel Lapel on guitar, and myself, Andrew Hitz, on tuba. For show notes, the TEM blog, and to learn more about TEM coaching, please visit our new website, tem.fm. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And that's going to do it for another episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician.